and it was pumping, and just, I was getting really excited, but it was an uncomfortable feeling that I cannot describe. But it was like it affected my breathing rate. It was affecting how my heart, and I began to feel nauseous. I began to feel very sick to my stomach, and it became more intense. And then it was almost like I couldn't hear the growl, but I could still feel it inside of me. And it got terrifying. It was terrifying. That's when I felt like I was frozen, that I could not move. I could not move my legs. I couldn't turn around. I could see Harry beside of me, and he was in the same shape. And as a matter of fact, I noticed, and it must have been me as well, but when I looked at my friend, I could tell that he was slumped in his shoulders and was kind of looking straight down. And so all this is going on, and I could still hear objects and things around me. But if you've ever had what you call tunnel vision, and that's what I felt like I had tunnel vision. Things were sped up around me, but yet I was in slow-mo. I was just in slow motion and could not do anything. That's when I heard something come in on the trail beside of us. The same trail that I had used to walk in from my walk beside the creek. And the creek come up behind our camp. Well, there was something coming. I could hear the steps. To be honest, I felt something coming. It was a feeling that I cannot describe. And it felt like, hey, something is coming. And in the fire glow of the camp and in the lantern, which was adjacent to us, I could see movement. And I felt something, and I kept looking, and I'm looking, and I'm catching something walking in, and it is bipedal. And I guess the thoughts of, is this beast, is this man? I don't know what that it is. And as it begins to get closer, I see a bipedal canid type wolf-like beast. 2 legs, and it's walking towards me. I can't move. I can't use my legs. I can't use my arms. This intense feeling, I'm almost can't breathe. It has sped my rate of breathing up like I had run a race. And this thing's getting closer to me. And as it gets closer to me, I notice the ears on it are erect, and they're like pointed towards me. And it's staying outside the glow of the fire, but it's getting closer and backing away, coming back, going back and forth. And it's pacing left and right. And then it walks in. And as it walks in, I can see this thing sniffing the air. And it's almost as if it's sniffing me. And I look back now, I wonder if it was trying to sniff fear. And then it grins at me. This thing exposes its teeth. And by this point, it comes in close enough, within 15 to 25 yards, and it exposes itself. And I'm seeing something that should not exist. This thing does not exist on this earth. And is it a man in a costume? Is this a hoax being played? Is it a joke? All these things going through my mind. But you got to also understand what is affecting my body. There's something not right with my body. Can't move, can't do anything, and this thing's getting closer. The only thing I could think of at the time was my religious upbringing. And I'm thinking, whatever this is, it's going to take me out. It's going to eat me or kill me. And I began to pray, and I prayed the shepherd's prayer, David's prayer, the Psalm 23rd. And I began to pray. And when I began to pray, I just felt like I was regaining my mind back, but I could see this thing and it was not moving closer. Now I'm praying in my mind. I'm not praying verbally yet. But this thing's staring at me. I'm staring at it. And I'm saying the prayer. And then I began to verbally pray. And I began to pray hard and louder and louder. Lord is my shepherd, I shall not fear. And by God's grace, I felt stronger. The intensity was still there, but I'm like, if it eats me, or whatever. But I'm beginning to gain what I felt at the time. I began to feel strength, and I began to feel stronger. And I felt, I don't know if it was my hands or my leg that moved first, but I moved. I no longer was like a child that was so afraid to get out of its bed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I felt stronger. And at some point, my senses come to me and I moved. And when I moved, my training kicked in and I retrieved my firearm with my right hand. And I had on my possession, it actually was my department issued weapon at the time. And I pulled my firearm and I pointed it at this creature. And when I did, the creature moved backwards. This beast, this demon, whatever I was seeing that should not exist, it moved. And that told me that this animal was intelligent. It was something to the animal. It moved backwards. And I'm standing there and I've got the firearm. You have to understand that we're trained and we know, and I mean in a millisecond, you've got to make decisions. When you let off a round and it leaves the end of your weapon, you've got to know where that round is going to. You've got to know what your target is. You've got to know, is that a man? Is it an animal? And I was real hesitant to pull that trigger. I still could not. I just couldn't fathom that this was anything but a man because it looked so much like a man. And I couldn't pull the trigger. And I lowered my gun. And when I lowered my gun, this creature advanced on me. The beast come closer and started walking towards me. And I felt at that point, it's a given. It's paid for. It's still approaching me. I'm trained to protect myself. I've got someone behind me I've got to take care of too. All these things are going through my mind. Everything I've described to you, and it's taken me 3 minutes, 5 minutes. This is what a policeman has to make up his mind in milliseconds. I fired twice. I raised my firearm and I discharged 2 rounds, tac-tac, almost sound like one. At the same time I shoot, simultaneously, whether if it was a sympathetic reaction or what, the man behind me, Harry, discharges his double-barrel shotgun. So I fired 2 rounds, he's fired 2 rounds, but when I fire my 2 rounds, poof. The creature that was in front of me, I don't know where it went. I heard noises going up the wall, but I didn't see it. It was almost as if this thing just dissipated. Yet I heard noises going up the wall. To this day, I don't know what happened and where it went to. But behind me, when my partner discharges his shotgun and he fires 2 times, I hear a squall. I hear a scream. So behind me, I've turned around at this point. I'm still trying to cover from that angle. I'm hearing something above us again. I'm hearing the screams or squall of something that sounds like a cross between a pig and some hideous animal. We've got a solid cane break that is behind these trees that runs along the creek. And I'm seeing the cane, just there's something going crazy in the cane. I also hear my partner running. At this point, he snatched up some stuff that was in the camp and he's left me.
See you, Martin.
See you, Bubba. I'm leaving
Bubba,
you.
yeah.
And so Bubba is gone, man. Bubba, he's left Martin, man.
Wow.
And so, I don't know what to think or do. And it's comical looking back now, but I'm frightened out of my wits' end. The only thing I can think of is, hey, if he's leaving, I need to go with him. And so I've still got my firearm in my hand. And you have to understand, 32 years of age at that time. So I'm running with my firearm. I say I remember, but honestly, I don't. I don't know how I cleared the bumper on the pickup truck. But I was into the back of the pickup truck immediately. Gun still out. Gun in my holster, I don't know. But I felt like I still had my firearm, my handgun. And I get in the back end of this pickup truck. And I hear Harry hit the ignition, and he cranks up this old big Dodge truck. It's very loud. And he cranks it up, and he's trying to get her going. And in fact, he's rocking back and forth. And I've got my hand, and I'm beating on the top of the roof of this thing. Hurry up, saying all kinds of things. And then it hits me that it's emergency brake. And I tell him to pop the brake. And he pops the brake. And at the same time as he starts to move, he cuts his headlamps on. He cuts his headlamps on, and then the realization as to what is taking place. Got creature over here that come in on my backside that came in off the creek and followed me in. That is a werewolf, human-looking thing. We got stuff over here in a tree in the cane that possibly has been shot. I got something up on top of the ridge, and then the headlights come on. And when the headlights come on, it's bright enough that 100 to 150 yards out in the middle of this corn patch where Harry, in fact, had been hunting that day, here's the man in the ghillie suit. But it's not a ghillie suit. And it's not one. There's two creatures. And these things are hideous. And when I tell the story, I don't normally tell the entire story because most people don't want to hear everything. But when I say that these things are not what you depict on TV, and it's not the Patty of California and the Gimlin film, these things were hideous. The headlights hit them. The biggest one is standing on two legs. The second one that was beside it, the creature, and I can't tell if they were male or female, but the smaller Bigfoot hairy man jumps down on all four. It just sinks to a crawl.
Hold on a second. Bigfoot?
Oh yeah, there's totally. I'm sorry. I'm pretty worked up by this point telling the story.
No, it's fine.
These are not. When I describe the other in detail, and I let you know this is a wolf-like creature, a beast or a half man, half something. When the headlights turn on, I've got an 8-foot hairy man, what I call a hairy man or a Bigfoot, that are not canid lupus, werewolf, anything like you've ever seen or is drawn as a dog man. These are Bigfoot.
Wow.
But they are not Bigfoot, man. They are not pretty Bigfoot like you see Patty waving at you as she walks away. These things are hideous, ugly looking. The tallest, the biggest one is staring straight at me, and I'm seeing teeth. And I'm whether if I'm imagining the look on the face or if it's what I saw, it was not friendly. And I got the feeling that this thing that was staring at me, I felt like there was such sheer hatred, and I could feel what this thing was looking at me. He didn't want to share his lunch. He wasn't there to get a banana. Whatever this creature was sheer hatred. And the one that had ducked down to the ground, the only description that I can give you is this: the one on the ground was either frightened or younger because of the headlights coming on, and it was a younger one that was frightened, or if he was going to an attack phase because he went down on all fours. At some point that I'm sitting and looking at this, and I never talk about this part because this is a part that is pretty private for me. But Scott Carpenter goes into something, and others have too, that they speak of mind speak. But I got some type of a message that I felt and that I read just as clear as my mind as if I watched a newspaper. This time, at some point, my partner has put it in park and has thrown the truck in gear and has turned the headlights away from these two hairy beasts that's out in the corn patch. I got all this stuff that is, if you can just imagine, cumulatively, all of it together. He decides it's time to make a mass tactical retreat, and he's got the car going, the truck going, and we're going out through this field. And if we could see this place, the description of you needed a Tiger tank to come out of there, but we were in an old 4-wheel drive. And as he's getting out, I'm looking for these two creatures in the corn patch. I'm looking for whatever is raising cane in the cane patch. I'm looking to see if something's going to fly. I mean, just grow, sprout wings and come off that ridge. And I'm still looking for this other cat that was over on the other side of the fire. I'm terrified, man. I am terrified. And as he leaves, he bumps into something, and I hear him screaming. I later find out from him that he's screaming, "I got one, I got one." I'm looking towards the camp, and whatever these things are going through our camp, and they are tearing that camp to bloody pieces. I see parts of the tent, the canvas, and the tarp that was on it is just being ripped to pieces. I've got the fire glowing, and I'm seeing the same thing that went up the ridge, the same thing that was in front of me. I'm seeing a canine creature that is standing on two legs, half man, half wolf, half something, and it's ripping our camp apart. I got the stuff in the cane patch, and the cane that is beside of us, it's running alongside of the truck. That's what's focusing my attention when he hits something. He hits something that goes down the right side, passenger side of this pickup truck. And I hear it, but it's not, I got too much going on. It's not registering that this thing's trying to get in the truck or in the back end with me. So he hits the creek, bottoms out, comes up, and we tear out of the camp. And we start heading for the trace. Some point, mile, a little bit further, I've been banging on top of the truck. My friend was an excellent pursuit driver at work. He was well noted, so he was a good driver. But he was, by this point, he's just lost control, and he's driving too fast, scary, and I'm beating on top of the roof, stop and let me in. I wanted inside that truck, and I wanted to ride with him. Somewhere at some point, he does let me in, and he is tearing out of Land Between the Lakes, and he is heading towards the South check station towards Dover, Tennessee. I finally get him calmed down enough to where that I'm telling him, head and stop at the ranger station. And Harry's arguing with me, and we're having a confrontation like we've never had before. He's not stopping at any ranger station. He's going home. He's not going to report this. He's not going to talk about it. And we're going back and forth, and we're probably a good 20 to 30 minutes away from the ranger station, which is the south end of it. And at some point, I just tell him, and I demand that he's going to the ranger station, because this is what we do. We need to report this. I've discharged my firearm. He's discharged his weapon. We've had some kind of beast come into our camp, and the Rangers need to know about it. I'm just locked in. We got to tell somebody. There was nobody at the station. We get to the Ranger station. There was an old 1990s two-door, the Jeep that they used to run. It's in the parking lot. The lights are dim. And as typical, there's no one there after dark at that time. And I still don't think they man the south the south or the north in the late evening at night. It's typical. So I get back in the truck after we stop. I look around. I look inside the building, get back in the truck. He's even more bound, and he's just determined that we're not telling nobody. We're getting the heck out of Dodge. At some point, again, I make strong demands. We're not leaving. We will come back in the morning. He reluctantly, very reluctantly, agrees, and finally we travel back to the area where this has actually taken place, but we remain on the trace, and we get within a few miles of this, heading towards the North Station, and we find a field off the side of the road where we think we can see for a long distance if anything is coming and going. And we park for the night, and we pull way off the road on top of a hill. And Harry's shook, I'm shook, we're both sick. And I'll be honest with you, it's not a good thing to talk about, on film or anything like that. And I address a little bit of it in the book, but we've used the bathroom on ourselves. Harry has done both 1 and 2, and I have urinated on myself and probably come close to doing number 2. But we're wet, we're dirty. Harry has thrown up a couple times during the night, and we're filthy, man, and we're also hungry, and we sit there in that field all night long. Harry stretches out across the bed of the truck on the inside. I'm in the bed. He's in the front of it, and I just get on top of the top of the truck, and I sit on the truck the rest of the night. And I mean, I'm on guard duty. I do not sleep. Harry's on the inside of the truck with the windows rolled up and the doors locked. He finally stretches out and gets some sleep. All through the night, I'm not able to rest. There's no activity. There's nothing on the trace. I can see the main highway. And I'm watching, hoping to see if either a marked patrol unit, ranger unit goes by, or anybody. But there's nothing. It's dead. So at some point, light comes, and we both get up, and we decide to clean ourselves up some. And that's what we did. We cleaned up, and I give him a pretty stern talking to about, we've got to go and report this. And so 2 or 3 hours go by. It's probably 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And we're standing outside the truck. When we look down, we're on the passenger side of the truck. And on the passenger side of the pickup truck, we have 3 heavy marks with a 4th mark coming down the side of the truck. And comes down the side of the truck, and you can see where it stops at the bumper, where it hung the bumper. And either it clamped onto the side of the truck, or he hit it and it forced that. I don't know what caused it, but he had 3 distinct claw marks that came down the truck with a 4th light one. And we looked at that, and we both were very shaken. And so we got ourselves together, and we get inside the truck, and that's when we head to the ranger station. And we're a few miles from the station, but we get there within a very few short minutes. And to our shock and surprise, when we get closer to the ranger station, it is a flurry and a world of activity. And it's still early in the morning. It's 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, man. There's no way that there should be that many visitors. There's no way that it's going to have that much activity. I mean, you're in what most people look at. You're in Jellystone Park, and people have come in there to use the bathroom or to get a map or buy a T-shirt. But this place, the parking lot's full. Both sides of the road is full. On the north and the south side lanes, they're both full. There's vehicles parked on both sides of the road, and the parking lot is full. And we look at each other, and we're kind of discussing, and we're figuring out that this can't be good. There's something that's taken place. And the closer that we get to the ranger station and I convince him to pull in, there's 2, possibly 3 news vans and the bigger trucks. And they've got their little telescopes up. And this is 1990s where you had the big satellite thing.
Mm-hmm.
And these vehicles are parked all around in the parking lot. And there's what I know from being in law enforcement, there's news reporters everywhere, like something has taken place. And there's marked and unmarked vehicles all over the place. And there's even a vehicle sitting in the parking place that I look and I realize that is some type of canine, not canine officer, but like a search and rescue or rescue squad with truck cargo on the back for dogs. And there are dogs in this thing. And there's a lot of officers that are standing beside the building and all this, that, and the other. So there's just give you a general idea of what we ran into. Harry doesn't want to walk in, so I elect myself spokesperson and I walk in. And I finally get someone's attention. There's, again, a flurry of activity on the inside of this place. And I said, hey, we had an incident in our camp last night. And I said, we had some type of creature or something, somebody dressed up to come in on our camp. And the guy freaks. You could tell he's the ranger guy in charge. And he tells me to be quiet and takes me off to the side and says, we'll talk somewhere else. And the people are looking at me, and there was some folks behind the counter, and you could tell they're staring me down too, like, what'd this guy see? But this guy didn't want to hear it. He did not want me, and he certainly didn't want me to talk about it in the foyer where people could hear. And so this went on for a few minutes that he gets me off to the side, and he says, so what happened? And I said, listen, man, I'm active duty patrol unit. I'm off duty out of Robertson County. I said, my partner's outside. And I began to give him the description of everything and break it down. And he said, well, we've had some bear activity, and I'm sure that's probably what come in on you. But, you guys are not supposed to be hunting bears. And I mean, he's just laying this story out on me that you guys have possibly shot and killed a bear out of season. You don't have tags, all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at him, I'm listening to him. I feel like that he's talking to me like I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
And so this goes on a few minutes, and I finally had enough. I said, hey, man, this is not what has taken place. And I said, we had some type of an animal that's not supposed to exist that has come in on us and all these things. So he ends up taking my ID, and he's got us separated. My partner's outside, and there's another ranger outside talking to him, getting a story from him. Then, as I'm standing there talking to this cat, my partner, Harry, takes the other guy out to the truck. And at this point, I can only imagine what is being said between them. And so Harry decides he's going to say, hey, you don't believe me? Come out here and look at our truck. Something foobarred our truck. And so they're looking at the truck, and the guy's shaking his head and pointing, and they're going back and forth. The other guy I'm talking to, he has another officer stay with me, and he's taking our credentials. He wants to see firearms and all this kind of stuff. And he walks over the truck. He goes in and he calls my immediate supervisor and he actually gets a hold of our sheriff. And at that time, the sheriff talked with him. I find out later when I get back, and they get into a pretty good shouting match. And he tells the guy, said, hey, man, these are his words and what was told to me, this is 2 of our finest deputies over there. And if they say something happened and what they said happened, then you need to listen to them. And the guy threatens that he's going to actually arrest me, especially me, because I've talked back to him, to be honest with you. And he's going to arrest me for poaching and being in possession of a handgun, not supposed to be in the park. And so I later find out and discover that the fight ensues between my boss, my sheriff, and this guy. And the sheriff tells him, hey, they're supposed to be armed 7 days a week anywhere within the state of Tennessee. And if you'll look at their back of their identification, that's exactly what it says. So they basically agree to disagree, that they'll have to fight over that later, that even as a police officer, that we didn't have the right to have handguns, which he probably was right on a federal scale. But so that's how the story basically ends at that point. At some point, he gets very upset and gets mad at me, and we escalate quite a bit, and he takes a break and walks away from me. Now, there's a point in time where I've had enough myself, but I do look up and I actually see some friendly faces. And what I tell people is this, is at one point I was a very noted individual in this state. And the reason being is not only because of what I did for a living, but because I was an elected officer for the state Fraternal Order Police. And so I knew police officers from all over the state, from Memphis to Knoxville to all points, the southern, northern points in the state of Tennessee. And I actually knew a state trooper that was standing there. And I went over and began to talk with the state trooper, and I noticed that one of the canine officers that was on search and rescue was in fact a local sheriff's department, but he also worked for search and rescue. And what they told me, the basic story is that there was 2 turkey hunters that was walking through a camp early in the morning, and they had discovered a man that had been pulled out of his tent and had been predated on, had been killed. And they came back and reported the incident, and that's why there was such a flurry of people and what had taken place. So sometime as soon as the sun come up, 2 turkey hunters actually walked across this cat that was hunting and was in the tent and had been predated on and had been killed, eaten alive. And so they began to tell me the story. And by this time, man, to be straight with you, I'm seeing red. I've been talked to like I was stupid and been fed the line of stuff. My partner comes back, and what he is told, now this is the part that would enrage anybody. Harry was told that there had been an armed robbery in one of the camps, in one of the, not just camps, but inside of a campground itself, and that someone had been hurt. And that this had nothing to do with us, that we were just basically 2 city folks that had come out there and maybe had seen a bear or got too overly excited, and we were seeing stuff. Man, all this together, and you add all these things together, Tony, I was not a happy camper or happy man. Finally, the head guy in charge walks over to me, and we have some more words, and I finally said something to him that, look, I'm tired of the BS. I'm tired of the bovine scatology that you're feeding me. I said, I've hunted bear. I've hunted all around several states in the United States. And at some point, I tell this cat, that I'm fed up with this stuff. And so he gives me my credentials back, my identification, driver's license, department stuff. And he basically tells me to leave the park, and that I'm a very lucky person that they didn't arrest both of us for hunting bear out of season, which I might add to you, Tony, there was no bear season in the state of Tennessee for this part of the state at any given time. The bears were not even supposed to exist in Land Between the Lakes in 1993 to the general public. And I made a statement to him, a couple things were said back and forth, and I told him I'd be happy to leave his company. And that's where the story ends as far as us leaving Land Between the Lakes that day. There is further story, though, that takes place when we get back.